Call the meeting back to order. I believe we've got the technical difficulty fixed so that we are still in public hearing. And I ask, but I will repeat one more time, or ask one more time, is there anyone wishing to testify?
We have none.
I will close the public hearing. Council, how would you like that?
Now I will move to approve the fiscal year 2024 budget amendment and direct staff to bring back an ordinance at a future council meeting.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now it's unfinished business, returning ordinances, and we do have one item. It is Strategic Initiatives Grant Award for the Rehabilitation of Spokane River.
Street.
Street.
Spokane River Street.
I was just thinking when I was reading that, man, that's a long thing to read, and then I misread it. So, thank you for the correction.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Andrew Arbini, Projects Division Manager for Public Works. Yes, there's a lot of Spokane Street, Spokane River, a lot of work happening in this area.
That's right, make me feel better.
Well, my presentation tonight is on a grant award for the Spokane Street Rehabilitation Project. Recapping a bit, this project was originally identified 2 years ago in 2022 among staff as a priority need in addressing the current surface condition of Spokane Street. Staff actually budgeted for the full cost of this project over the previous 2 years. And last July in 2023, we became aware of a grant funding opportunity. So with consultation between staff and our design consultant, we pursued this grant funding, received notice that we actually were awarded some grant funding towards the project. And this is the MOU and agreement that we are requesting approval for tonight. A bit of an overview. The Spokane Street Rehabilitation Project encompasses the area between the Spokane River Bridge and the eastbound ramps of I-90. So this will be a full depth removal and replacement of asphalt pavement, curb to curb, essentially. Does include some improvements to the surface crossing, the rail crossing there along Spokane Street. And we also have some utility improvements that are included in this. So the next couple slides are mainly just focused on the grant funding program, and that's the majority of my presentation tonight. So last March, the state governor approved House bill that provided for grant funding statewide. It was $100 million that was split between two categories, small and large urban areas throughout the state of Idaho. We were one of 127 applicants that applied for that funding and received $1.17 million. So pretty exciting news. To compare that to what that looks like with the actual project costs, it does not provide the complete funding for the project. Right now, our current estimate of the project is about $1.8 million. So that would include engineering, construction costs, consultation components to that. The $1.17 million grant does allow us to use that amount towards the entire project cost. And then the balance of those costs would come from the budgeted amount in the Spokane Street line item fund in the city's budget. A little bit of the timeline of where we plan to go with this. So following a signed memorandum tonight, the MOU will be returned to ITD. We anticipate going out to bid very soon, and then we would return with a recommendation to council following bid opening, ideally with a recommendation to award that construction contract. We are looking at starting construction this spring and summer. We are aware of a lot of construction occurring in this area, the biggest of which is the Spokane River Bridge work that has recently started, and they will be working on the bridge itself. So we are working with that project team to minimize the impacts. Ideally, we could be in and out before that project starts, and that's the direction that we're heading currently. We'll have more information as we move forward through bidding and get closer to an award. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for Andrew?
Is there a reason that it has to be done at the same time as the bridge work? Like to be able to use the money from the state, or would we be able to do it in the next year or once the bridge is completed?
So there's a few things. It's probably less of a grant funding restriction. I would have to look at what the completion date for the grant funding itself is. I believe there might be more flexibility on that front. The larger concern is the maintenance and current condition of the pavement.
And Andrew, I think if you go one more slide, you've got a picture behind the questions. There you go.
I do. Thank you for that reminder. So this is a lot of what we are currently dealing with. In fact, it was a pretty big decision point to pursue the grant funding, even though there was a potential of receiving a large amount towards the project. It also meant that we would spend a significant amount of time and effort in repairing the roadway, which our crews have been doing, especially with the current temperatures and this freeze-thaw cycle. So the largest driver is the current condition and repairing this while we can still preserve some of the existing substructure of the pavement. I guess one thing to note that sometimes you look at a full replacement of the roadway. In this instance, we have a few areas that we will need to dig out the sub-base and replace, but by and large, the current subsurface is still intact. The longer we go, the higher the likelihood that we would have to replace the whole roadway, which also starts to increase costs.
Okay.
My thought would be too, is I know it's an inconvenience, but do we inconvenience people twice?
Right.
Or do we try to do them both and get them done within a relatively common time frame so the inconvenience is only once? And there's nothing easy about it. You're going to inconvenience people, so.
Yeah, we met a few weeks ago with the other project team, and if we can work our schedules to where we are completed or near completion by the time they start working on the bridge part. They have a couple different components to their project that require in-water work, so it may be that we could complete and be out of the way by the time they start working on the bridge superstructure itself.
Any other questions? So you need a motion to approve the acceptance of the grant, is that correct?
Correct. Acceptance of the grant and your signature.
I'll move to approve the Strategic Initiatives Grant Award for the rehabilitation of Spokane Street
Second.
And
Motion.
authorize the mayor to sign.
and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Second still stand?
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion? A roll call, please.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Sigler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Stigleader,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thanks, Andrew. Next item up is new business, and we have a few items. The first one is Citizens Handbook that was recommended or suggested by Councilor Westland. How do you want to do this? You want to talk? You want Councilor to?
I just thought maybe Counselor
Perfect.
Westland would kind of explain his concept. It was in, his email was included in the packet to give everybody an idea, and then if council has any ideas or direction after that, they could provide that.
Randy, want to give us a quick
Okay,
synopsis?
yes. So I'd like to propose the creation of something tentatively called the Citizens Handbook, or Post Falls Citizens Handbook. In short, an annual publication that we would mail out to everybody with a kind of a summary of everything you would want to know as a citizen of Post Falls. Here's an overview of how the city works. Here's some key information. Here's where you can go to find more resources about specific topics. I was riding along with one of our snowplow operators a couple weeks ago, and he was telling me that he just wishes people understood X, Y, and Z about his job. It would make everything so much easier. And I think that's a common theme among a lot of the city staff, that there's a lot of work that goes on, and nobody knows how much work it takes to keep the city operational. And I've been impressed going through everything and meeting with different people employed by the city, and just realizing the amount of work and the scope of everything that's required. And I think it would be really good if we were better able to communicate that to citizens so they could see, all right, this is actually what the city is doing with the tax dollars that we spend. Some example content we might be putting in there is maybe for snow plowing and streets maintenance, we put, here's a map of the streets in the city, and these are the ones we plow, and this is priority 1, 2, and 3, and what that means. These are the ones plowed by ITD, and these ones by the highway district. and talk about maybe the necessity of moving things like basketball goals back off the sidewalk and public rights of way. It's to keep the snowplows clear when they're going through, and then talk about like the streets have to be repainted every year and all the work that goes into that and what that looks like. Maybe we put some things in there like the did you know facts about, did you know it costs this many dollars to repave a mile of road, and this is how often we have to do it, and this is what the maintenance schedule looks like. Maybe a map of sewer lines and lift stations, and here's what a lift station is, and here's what it does, and this is why we need this kind of infrastructure. And maybe a letter from the mayor in the beginning, I think would be a nice touch, letter to the community. And I was looking back at the strategic values from the December 5th workshop before the city council meeting then, of integrity, accountability, service, innovation, and kindness that the city put forward. And I believe this would fit very nicely with all of these because it falls under this category of transparency and communication, of showing integrity and accountability and service, but then also innovation, because I don't know of any other cities doing something like this kind of initiative. And then that kindness of just saying, hey, this is who we are as like the city entity, and this is what we're doing with the money, and like welcome to Post Falls, and here's how we think about this, and how we approach that. In particular, I think we could benefit a lot from including things like employee spotlights, where we say, here's a particular employee, this guy works for the city, here's what he does, here's what his job is like. And that could be a really neat thing for employees to be kind of featured in there. And then underneath that we say, oh, do you want to be cool like this guy and drive a tractor? By the way, we're hiring. And that, because it gets mailed out to everybody, we'll maybe get some interest from that. And then one of our strategic directions was a priority for community, which is goal 1 was improve the ability to tell our story and then create quality engagement and improve the ease of engagement. I think an initiative like this could do a lot to improve that ease of engagement, because it's hard to get input from citizens, and we can have public events and we can have maybe some people show up at city council meetings, but it's a big ask because they tend to be boring and people only show up if there's something in particular to complain about. But extending something like this to say, here's all the information you need to know, I think really helps bridge that gap between citizens and government. So that's the pitch. I'd love
Thank
to
you.
hear
I
your
would
guys'
like to
thoughts.
point out that he said you guys are boring, but that's just,
I own that.
that's good information. Thank you very much, Randy. Council, thoughts?
So, great idea. Of course, there's always 2 challenges. One is printed materials are expensive, and 2 is actually getting people to read it. So one thing that I believe that city staff, particularly Warren's team, is working on is updating the website and so forth, such that information is a whole lot easier to find. The effort to update policies, procedures, all that sort of stuff. It is really hard to find that, and I think a lot of people can find a lot of answers to their questions in that, although I like your thought that a very distilled version of that for wider consumption is great. I think what I would prefer to see is, because like you said, there's a ton of stuff to cover. So maybe on a seasonal basis, 1 or 2 page thing that can go on with the utility bill that highlights a couple of things and then points them to the digital places where they can get more info on certain stuff. There's the social media, but it's a little bit random on what comes up on that at any given time. Once the city website is more accessible with easier paths to particular information, but then make those kinds of quarterly flyers more useful to point them back to the city site to direct them to that sort of thing. But yeah, when you come up on late fall, hey, snow plows are coming out soon, here's the things to know, here's how many miles of road we plow and so forth, and then springtime comes around and it's pothole fixing season, so here's all the street maintenance that goes on, here's what we do at parks to get ready for the summer, the number of ball fields, that sort of thing. But it could also keep the cost down in terms of physical printing and mailing too. But we have to have the electronic infrastructure to be able to support the purpose behind that. But I'm picking up what you're putting down. I like what you're thinking.
We could put some in the water bill. I see a couple of issues with that one. One is if you're renting, you probably don't get that because we bill property owners and not tenants. And the other is I don't get those because I use the online payment and it's all automatic. So I don't even get the water bill. And every once in a while I might go look at the PDF version that just goes automatically archived to my email, but it's not something I actually see and look at. The Parks and Rec Department does this booklet a couple times a year, and I think this is fantastic. We love getting this in the mail. It has a bunch of stuff that's going on in the city, and here's how you would do this. It's got a nice presentation. It's not just like a blurb on a bill that nobody wants to read. And so it's fun to kind of sit and look at this. And I would expect that whatever we spend on this would be similar to what we would spend doing a Citizens Handbook mailing like that, because while the printing cost might be a little higher if it's a little bigger than this, we're only doing it once a year. And so I don't know what we spend on this, but I would be curious to have city staff look into that and maybe give an estimate to see what it would cost to do a physical mailing. So I think you get a lot more people looking at it that way.
Other councilors?
Yeah, I have thoughts, of course. I also like that. My kids love it. It's kind of like getting a toy magazine in the mail, though, because we're not going to do all of those things, just like we're not going to buy all the toys. So thanks for sending that out. But I tend to agree with you about the mailer. And correct me if I'm wrong, don't we already send out a map of snowplows every year that says which streets are going to be?
It's digitally available. We put it on our website, and we also have it hosted on the social media site.
Oh, I
But-
feel like there's been one on my refrigerator then, maybe for many years, that came late, like a long time ago. But I actually would like to propose doing something in the utility bill, because I feel like that will reach a lot more people than the website. I'm really sorry, which is one of the reasons why I asked the question in our workshop about how many hits the website is getting for that transportation. Because I feel like this mailer, even if it was quarterly, I think yearly is not often enough for the type of information that we want to communicate to residents. I actually think it needs to be more often than that. But I would be interested to know the difference between how many people go to the website that has all of this information versus how many people are actually getting their water bills. I appreciate that you get it in your email because you're real fancy, but I don't think that that's what most people do. But that's what I would love to see, those numbers. If we're really going to pursue this avenue, I'd like to see how many hits these websites are getting where we're putting the information, and then also how many residents are receiving their water bills by email. But even then, we could put the PDF into those emails, and then that would be the same as them like getting their water
And
bill.
it may be a combination of both.
So staff can put together the numbers, for both. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, Stephanie just sent me reports on the
Oh.
hits and the number of PDFs that are downloaded off our website.
Yeah.
And so we can put that information together along with what the costs are if we were to do something similar to the pamphlet and the utility bill and bring that information back. Department heads were very supportive of this idea. We did have a conversation about it, and they had some ideas about videos and outreach and education and stuff through social media videos and stuff to add in addition to it. So I think you could do similar to what all three of you were saying.
How about the other councilors? Any other comments or anything in addition to?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I would agree that it has to be monthly or at least quarterly. I don't think yearly is going to, I don't think it's going to cover what you're wanting to cover. A lot of the things a lot of it's seasonal as far as things coming up and events. I think it would have to be monthly or at least quarterly. I also have concern with the cost. So either including it with the Park and Rec brochure or the utility bill, I think could be a really good option there. And I agree, getting people to read it. A lot of it's going to go to their mailbox and they're not going to really look at it. So if there's a way that we can include it and bring the cost down, I'd be in support of seeing that.
Josh, you okay?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Nathan?
Definitely.
Yeah, I would echo, what most of you have said. I think it's a good idea. I do like the idea of maybe having it as an insert in the Parks and Rec existing mailer that we do. Because the main thing that I see with it is you don't really know how to capture, or people are going to pay attention to things that are relevant to them. And so you mentioned the Parks and Rec. Most of that is going to be sports and kids programs. Well, I know my parents across the street that are 78 years old, they don't really even look at that because it's not relevant to them. So again, it's concerned with return on investment. If we spend a bunch of money on things that are not relevant, it's just going to be round filed as soon as they get it. And so I think the insert idea or making that larger is probably kind of meets in the middle. But I would also like to see it drive more traffic toward our website where they have a more comprehensive look at what's going on and kind of use that as our main source of information and just have a lot of arrows pointing toward it and maybe in the water bill as well.
Shelley, can you then, everyone seems to be in agreement, can you get some information put together? I'll weigh in. I support it. I think it's a great idea. When you first mentioned it, when I first got the email, I was concerned with cost. But if there's ways we can address the issues that have been raised here, and like I said, maybe a combination of everything that's been talked about, staff can come back with a proposal.
Yes.
We can discuss it at a future
Yeah.
date.
We'll bring something back. On the website, Stephanie has met with a couple of folks about redoing our website, so that is something that we are planning this year. So driving more folks to the website, making it easier to use, all of that is within that strategic plan goals. I love the fact that you went to the values and the goals in the strategic plan and related this back to it, so we appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thanks for bringing that forward, Randy. Next item up is resolution, Water Wastewater Division disposal of records. This is a common occurrence. I asked Shannon, we've got to keep records for 2 years, and she has told me these records are probably older than 2 years, and it's just a matter of cleaning up and creating more space. So it's not like we're shredding anything we're not supposed to be shredding. But that's what this resolution is, and Shannon says, if there's questions, she can answer them, but other than that, we just need approval, which is kind of a standard action for us to authorize the destruction of those records.
I would move to approve the resolution for the Water and Wastewater Division disposal of records.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Sigler,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Stiglitter,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up is the Montrose 2022 PUD amendment and subdivision MDA file. Mr. Manley.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor Jacobson and Council President Malloy. Yes, this here is originally was intended to go on the consent agenda. Oftentimes when you see development agreements, that's where they're at. This one here has a little bit of history, so we want to just kind of talk about the process about this Montrose PUD amendment and subdivision. So here is the current PUD subdivision process we have here. You have an application that's made, staff looks at it, we put together the staff report. Many of you guys have seen that. We go through the public hearing process. We go before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They look at the PUD per our current code of 18-2080, and then they look at the subdivision. They compare that subdivision to that code section you see there. Back when Montrose was put together, we had development agreements for both the PUDs and for subdivision. That's evolved. Now it's just the subdivisions you see there, and that's in that 1720 where it requires that development agreement. So because it's an agreement, a contract, that's where you see that's why it needs to come back to City Council. We look at when it goes back to the subdivision here, what they reviewed there on is those 6 review criteria at the P&Z, and they found that that met that. Here's the continuing on in the process. You see here, once that decision is rendered, we get a reasoned decision. This is a City Council then comes on the consent for the MDA for a subdivision. PUDs oftentimes won't get a development agreement. They'll have, unless it's embedded with another subdivision, you can see it that way. And then you have another chance of looking at the subdivision at the time of final plat. So that's the role currently in our process, is you get a development agreement coming before you, and you also get a final plat. That's after the Planning and Zoning Commission has approved the subdivision based off that 6 criteria right there. So because we brought up the Montrose PUD, I felt like talking a little about what was the nuts and bolts of it, not the whole public hearing presentation, but here's the area that was affected by the proposal. You see it in hatched red. That's the overall, the PUD area. There's the owner and the applicant there. You can see here that the requested action was they wanted some deviation from the lot coverage. A lot of the lots you see out there are 6,000 square feet. They're a little bit more unique. They may have some rear loaded type product, and they have diverse housing product. And in that, they desire to have more of a lot coverage. Currently, our code requires a 40% max lot coverage structure and like a detached shop. That was creating some pinch points. So this allowed a little bit more design flexibility for those lots. They also had, and I'll show you in a slide coming, some cul-de-sacs. They moved some cul-de-sacs, and it was a way to memorialize the change of their street layout as well. They also removed some cluster housing for multifamily and those clusters. I'll show you here on both phase 4 and 5 in exchange for single family. So here's the original PUD, and you can see here phase 4 and 5. You can also see that there's no lots, proposed lots being platted. That's why when they came forward, there was a PUD and a subdivision, because they also proposed new lots for that. So the replacement of what was going to be multifamily and cluster housing, now they're going to have the single-family detached lots. There's those areas there. There's the extents of the phasing there you see in red. I kind of broke up those two, phase 4 and 5 of that Montrose PUD. Here's what was in the phasing plan of the adopted Montrose package back in the day when it was originally approved. You can see that they struck out those areas and they're just doing single family. That mentioned cul-de-sacs, they, instead of having every road go east-west and dead end, they now propose a configuration where they're having more the curvilinear streets and connectivity. Due to the constraints of some of the rail and other, they did end up having a couple cul-de-sacs. Staff discussed this as part of the process, that it was deemed an acceptable concession to go from 4 to 2, even though ideally we'd have 0, but at times you get, faced with looking at a compromise, and that's what was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's the kind of nuts and bolts of the development agreement and what the purpose of the development agreement is a little bit. Do you have any questions for me?
What questions to John? Not here. I like the idea of elimination of some of the cul-de-sacs. We're out in that area quite frequently, and the elimination of the cluster housing, lowering the density, going from multi to single family, I think really fits well with that area. They've just done a nice job on that development. So,
And the setbacks will remain the same, so I don't think increasing the lot coverage is going to have any effect on anybody. So to get lower density and better transportation connectivity, I think it all looks good to me.
Yeah, you actually had some people that had an open patio that were never able to get a permit to put a covered patio on because it needs a permit, which then goes part of the lot coverage. They were able to now cover their covered patio in their backyard.
I have 2 questions, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
Can
Samantha.
you tell me what cluster housing is? I haven't heard that term before. And then also, if they're taking out the cluster housing and the multifamily, does that mean they're putting in more single family? What are they doing
Yeah,
with that space?
basically they're reducing the density by
Okay.
exchanging out the multifamily and the cluster housing. Cluster housing can be in the form of single family also. It's more of like your pocket housing product. Some of their cottage product could be a cluster
Okay.
housing, so it's like a lot of housing in one little pocket.
Okay.
It could be done through a commercial site plan type multifamily aspect. It could also be done in like the cottage. You've seen the cottage code. That's another angle they could do, maybe a cluster housing product too.
Is that a zone that we currently have? I haven't heard that term be used, so
we don't. I think we have newer terms now,
Okay.
like cottage communities, and there's more. Back in the day when this was done, I think cluster housing was like a coined phrase that was kind of popular at the time. It's still used. I think planners, they hear cluster housing, instantly we know what that means, and we can translate it. So, but yeah, it's basically just a pocket, a group of housing in a higher density, in a smaller footprint.
Yeah, second question, Samantha, did you get them both answered?
I think so. It just, on where you have the lines crossed out, it looks like they're taking things out but not adding anything in. And I mean, it sounds like a great plan, but I was just
And
curious
if you look
about
at the
that.
top left up there, that last, you see where they reduced the number of
Yeah, that's
units?
the number I was looking for.
From the site, that's where they're showing that reduction.
And I could be wrong, I made an assumption, but there's also storage along that, so I'm assuming that goes away too, right?
Yeah, they replaced basically in the state, basically by approving that subdivision. I'll go back to that subdivision layout. They carried that all the way out to that rail corridor. So in essence, yeah, they replaced the storage as well with the storage was never really referenced very good in the PUD document. So it was never really, when we went through the process, didn't identify it per se as the document, because the document called out the cluster and the multifamily housing very clearly. And then by approving the subdivision, you see what they had here. They continued the green belt going east-west, and they put single-family all the way up against the rail corridor.
To get back to Councilor Stigliter's question, though, which way, you're right there. So they're taking away 106 units of cluster and 162 of multifamily, but single family looks like it's still saying 265. Taking away 42 of cluster and 132 of multifamily, but the single family staying at 169. The assumption is those numbers are going up, right?
Yeah, those are going up. Those,
Okay.
they are reflected in this right here. That's the total.
Okay, sorry. Thanks.
That's a good question. That's fine. Everybody else?
All right, thanks.
And we just need approval on that, correct?
I'd move to approve the Montrose 2022 PUD amendment and subdivision MDA file number PUDA-22-1/SUBD-22-10.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy,
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Stigliter,
Aye.
Westland,
Aye.
Walker,
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next section of the agenda is the citizens' issues, and this is a section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council on a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. If anyone wishes to testify, come forward. Seeing none, next item up is administrative staff reports. The first item, 2023 department accomplishments.
So good evening. A few years ago, we started doing staff reports to help council understand accomplishments, project status reports and updates. We try to keep these 5 to 10 minutes. As part of the strategic plan, we wanted to put in with that just a small accomplishments update to council in January, February of each year. So for this year, this is our 2023 city accomplishments. We are doing this on calendar year, not the fiscal year, so this is based on the calendar year of 2023. City of Post Falls has continued to work with the Post Falls Urban Renewal Agency in closing out districts. Just most recently, we've closed out 3 districts. The overall valuation that's been brought to the city from closed districts is $986 million. These most recent closures have brought $809 million of that. So these were big districts. When you put it in whole, the East Post Falls district was one of the largest ones. I believe it is the largest one we've ever closed. Along with that, we've had some land purchases, and these land purchases are within our master plans and also within our facility plan. And the land application land swap brought an additional 94.35 acres to us, and this additional acreage is needed to meet the wastewater master plan guidelines. All of these purchases assist the city with planning for the future and helping to provide for sustainable services to the community. And I'll say the PD one, I think, was one of the kind of wins for us. We didn't think we'd be able to acquire land next to the police department station, and we'd been told from the owners in the past that they had no interest in selling to us. So I want to congratulate the chief on making that happen, because that is great for us to be able to actually expand that campus. The next one is community development. They've had another busy year, and they continue to oversee transportation projects along with updating our transportation master plan. They also coordinate with ITD, Post Falls Highway District, and KMPO. In addition to that, planning has introduced both cottage homes and tiny home ordinances over the last year for consideration to assist with the opportunities for affordable housing options. While residential permitting has slowed down, permits and inspections have continued at a steady basis, and a number of commercial properties have begun developing over the last several years. And I think you see that as you're driving along some of our main corridors. We're starting to see that commercial. In the past, we've always kind of been a bedroom community, and now we're starting to see the commercial fill in along Highway 41 and out on the west side of town. The police department also has opened up a west side substation to assist with having more of a police presence in an area that has had notably more crime activity. Out on the west side, there were some issues out there. More focus was given to that area and to the hotels and stuff on the west side. This substation will also will allow us to do some additional training at that site, and I think it's going to be open to other agencies also to sign up for training. So it's kind of a win-win for everyone. I know the businesses that are out in that area have been very excited about the substation opening up. In addition to the substation, the department has had a number of technology upgrades. These upgrades help us with just providing general services to our citizens. It also helps us with trying to keep our workforce numbers down, so things that we can create that have technology that allow us to have less hours of employees' time spent helps reduce that need for the additional workforce, which has been a struggle for us over the last year in the police department, is keeping those police department positions filled. So the next department is the Public Works Department, and it's also, everybody's been busy. Along with system updates listed, one of the big highlights is the newly negotiated, and it's an IPDES permit. And I had to look that up. So it's an Idaho Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Program. Did anyone know that? It's pretty exciting. Yeah, he knows that. That is a pretty exciting thing. I think that's only the second time that permit's been renewed in the time that I've been here. And I've been here 26 years. Also, the pictures of the wastewater plant itself. We are continuing with that tertiary project, and I put down here in black and white that we are hoping to have that project completed in 2024. Right, John? And I think next meeting we'll have an update on that project for you. The last is just our administrative services. So we strive to ensure we're providing the adequate support for service departments to provide quality services to the community. Human Resources is focused on workforce recruitment and is working towards succession planning and training endeavors for 2024, along with an update to our personnel policy. The IT has completed a disaster recovery site installation and continues to roll out new software platforms and training for departments. Also, we've enhanced our social media presence and are working on updating our current website. Along with these changes, admin is working with IT and media on deploying more communication internally and externally. So that's our accomplishments for 2023. I can take any questions.
Questions, comments?
Oh, can we?
Good.
I'm very excited.
Oh,
Good job.
yeah. Thank you.
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
And we talked earlier, we had a meeting. We're hoping to have this phase done in 2024, as Shelley said, for the wastewater plant. We're gonna celebrate.
It's been a long poll, man.
There will be, yes, there will be celebrating when that is done.
Expensive project, and staff has spent a ton of time and effort to get us to where we are, so it's very appreciated. Very much
And the mayor
appreciated.
did let us know that he will be looking to appoint somebody if someone needs to serve jail time
Oh,
over.
yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
So if we fail the permits, if we fail the deadlines, the mayor has the opportunity to go to jail, but legal counsel has informed me that I can appoint someone.
A representative.
Just to let you know. All right. Next up is the update on the Post Falls Community Forest Hazard Fuels Treatment Project.
Mayor Jacobson, members of council, thanks for your time this evening. So my name is Preston Hill. I'm the urban forester for the city of Post Falls. And this evening I hope to give you an update and a little more details on a hazard fuels treatment project that we're about to begin in the Post Falls Community Forest. So some of you probably know that our urban forestry division helps to manage the 650 acres of natural areas that we have. So this was the scene in August of this past summer. That is the Parkway fire. Ended up being a pretty ferocious 80-acre fire on the Post Falls Community Forest, almost entirely contained. Thankfully, the response was great and immediate to that fire, and so nobody was injured and no adjacent properties were damaged. But the response was very expensive and multi-jurisdictional. IDL, KCFR, and PD spent quite a bit of time and effort and expense fighting that fire. So currently, that portion of the community forest is still closed. That's shown in this map on the area in yellow. We expect it to be closed until late spring. There are public hazards back there still, since most of the vegetation in the burned area is gone. Those root systems aren't holding that soil in place any longer. We have trails where we expect erosion to take place. We have trails alongside rock faces that have been exposed to high heat, so we don't know what the freeze and thaw is going to do with those rocks sloughing off of those rock faces. And so we want as much temperature differential and precipitation events to occur as possible before we open this up again to the public. So that's where we stand now. So in November, we presented to you the possibility of a cross-jurisdictional or cross-boundary collaborative project for hazard fuels treatment. These are the agencies that are involved. Idaho Department of Lands, they are the grantor for that project. It is a $125,000 project. Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management, they are the grantee for that project. City of Post Falls, we are offering the location, the site for that project. And within the City of Post Falls, it is also a collaborative effort between the Parks and Recreation Department and Public Works, since both of us have a vested interest on that, in that location. Avista Utilities is also a property owner in the community forest. They own some of that property. And Inland Forest Management, they're the consultant who has written the prescription for that work, and their team is also managing the contracts for that work. This is the map you were presented with in November. That hatched out yellow area represents a 300-foot wide fuel break along the southern and eastern property boundaries of the entire community forest. The area in red is the perimeter of the Parkway Fire burn area. The ignition point is farther to the northwest, and the fire spread to the southeast. And so that's why we prioritized a fuel break along those boundaries first when it comes to hazard fuels treatment. So what we're talking about is a shaded fuel break. So a traditional fuel break would be the elimination of all fuels. It would be a clear cut, essentially. Obviously, we have recreation and wildlife interests in those areas, so that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about fundamental, classic, fire-wise treatments. So the elimination of underbrush at the ground level, the reduction of ladder fuels between ground brush and tree crowns, and to the greatest extent possible, the separation between crowns of trees. So that's a before and after picture of a similar treatment, and that's a photo of the type of machine that would be used in our machine unit. So forgive me for this slide, it's a little map heavy, I apologize. What you're looking at here are 4 maps along the southern boundary of the site. So this area shaded in purple is the first unit to be treated. That is the one farthest to the west. This polygon in red or orange is the next unit to be treated to the east of the one in purple. The pink area in the third map is the third unit to be treated, and the blue area on that fourth map is the fourth unit to be treated. The first unit on the left is the only machine unit on the site, so that's where they would use the mechanical masticators on skid steers or other machines. The rest of those units are all hand treatment units. So we are talking about cutting and limbing trees by hand, piling and burning that brush. So that's another picture of a treatment in progress. I show that here because of the burning. We should all know that this project is about to kick off, and it is slated for burning the fuels. And so there will be quite a bit of burning up there. And our timeline for that, or our window for that, is short. We need to get the project done, or at least those 3 hand treatment units done before our burn window is over. And so we hope to be done with that by the beginning of April. We're going to have a public open house on March 4th at Camila Park, the Trailhead Building. I encourage any of those public who are interested to attend. This is an example of a flyer that we'll be sending out or mailing out to all residents within 1/2 mile of the community forest. And this is our opportunity for all of those agencies involved, City of Post Falls, IDL, Inland Forest Management, and KCOEM, to give a little presentation about the project and the future of the site, and also an opportunity for any members of the public to ask questions, voice concerns, or otherwise learn additional information. With that, I'll take any questions.
Good information, Preston. Any comments or Go ahead,
Yeah,
Randy.
I'm curious about the rationale for removing the fuels now. It seems like the fire's already happened, so removing the fuels now is it because there's a disproportionately high likelihood of another fire in the same spot?
Not in the same spot, but the entire site did not burn, right? And so we're really concerned that this might happen again. And so we want to do everything that we can to mitigate that. We can't make the woods fireproof. In fact, some of the area that burned in the Parkway fire did not have very much underbrush. It was quite concerning exactly what burned and how hot it burned because of the lack of the underbrush. So we can't make the woods fireproof, but what we hope to do is to reduce the intensity of fire and to slow the spread of the fire, if there is another one, to give first responders more opportunity to attack the fire with less expense and less risk.
Is there a greater likelihood of the fire being on the north side of that road versus on the south side? Or is it just that's like the land that we own, therefore that's where we can do
Correct.
something?
Correct. This is the city's property, and so this is the portion of the property that we can treat. However, all of the agencies involved are very interested in public education. And so a part of the reason for the open house is so that property owners who are interested in doing a similar treatment on their property can learn more about it. IDL specifically will be speaking about funding opportunities that are available for them. And so while we can't treat adjacent properties, we know that borders only exist for us, not for fires. And so we would love to collaborate.
Thank you.
The westernmost portion there that isn't going to be treated, is that because of financial restrictions or is there?
Yeah, so we saw this as the best first step on what to do out here. It is not the complete plan for the site. We recognize there are lots of areas in there that could use additional fuels treatments, but this is our best first step. We see
There are
it
a
as
lot
multi-year
fewer
project.
structures in the farthest westernmost portion of it too, right?
Yeah, and the prevailing wind is to the east, so.
Thank you. I think just your presentation was great, and the attention that you're giving to keeping it looking as like normal as it could be, so that we can all enjoy it, I think. So thank you so much for that extra detail.
Thank you.
Thanks, Preston. Good information. Next item up is mayor and council comments, and I think I can say this publicly, but I'd like to congratulate Councillor Westland and his bride on the arrival of a new baby son. Last night?
Yesterday morning, at 4 in the morning.
Yeah,
yes.
4 in the morning, and he's here tonight, so congratulations, and we're glad they're both doing well.
Thank you.
Council comments? Seeing none, we do not need an executive
Do
session.
not.
The next motion is,
Adjourn?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.